The Volanti Collective had watched Earth for 300 years. They had seen everything. They had seen humans kill each other in massive wars. They had seen them build weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had seen famines, plagues, and disasters that would have broken any other species. But humans never broke. They kept fighting. They kept surviving. They kept growing. This fascinated the collective. Most species, when faced with such hardship, would give up. They would accept their fate and fade away into nothing. But humans were different. They were stubborn in a way that the collective had never seen before. They refused to die. For 3 centuries, the collective watched and waited. They had rules about making contact with primitive species. Humanity was not ready, they decided. Too violent. Too unpredictable. Too dangerous to approach. But then everything changed. The collective's deep space sensors detected something that made their leaders very nervous. Human ships were leaving the solar system. Not just small probes or exploration vessels. These were massive colony ships, carrying thousands of humans to distant stars. Humanity had developed faster than light travel, and they were spreading across the galaxy. The collective council met in emergency session. The debate lasted for days. Some argued that humanity should be destroyed before they became a threat. Others said that was too extreme. In the end, they decided on a different approach. They would send diplomats. They would offer humanity membership in the collective. They would bring these dangerous creatures under control through politics. Instead of war. Ambassador Thelvorn was chosen for this important mission. He was the best diplomat the collective had. He had ended wars between 17 different species. He had convinced the Kreth Dominion to surrender without firing a single shot. If anyone could handle humanity, it was him. His ship descended through Earth's atmosphere on a beautiful spring morning. The sky was clear and blue. The sun was just rising over the Atlantic Ocean. Below, a military base waited for his arrival. This was the meeting place that Earth's government had chosen. Thelvorn looked through his viewing screen at the primitive structures below. Concrete buildings, metal fences, vehicles that still used wheels. He felt a mix of amusement and pity. These creatures had achieved faster than light travel, yet they still lived like this. They were like children who had found a dangerous weapon. They needed guidance. They needed the collective. The ship landed softly on the designated platform. Thelvorn checked his translation device one final time, then signaled for the doors to open. Warm air rushed into the ship, carrying strange smells. Salt from the ocean, fuel from the human machines, and something else. Something that smelled like tension and fear. Outside, a group of humans waited. Thelvorn studied them carefully as he walked down the ramp. They were small creatures, barely reaching his chest. Their bodies were soft and fragile, covered in fabric uniforms. Their faces showed a mix of emotions, curiosity, suspicion, and something that looked like defiance. At the front of the group stood an older female. Her hair was gray and cut very short. Her uniform was covered with small metal decorations that Thelvorn assumed were symbols of rank and achievement. She stood perfectly straight despite her obvious age. Her eyes were sharp and cold, like a predator watching its prey. This was Admiral Patricia Cole. Thelvorn had studied her file during the journey to Earth. She had served in her military for over 40 years. She had commanded fleets in 3 different conflicts. She was considered one of the most capable officers in human history. She was also known for her stubbornness and her refusal to back down from any challenge. Beside her stood a younger male, Commander Daniel Hayes. He was tall for a human, with dark hair and a serious face. He was Patricia's aide and one of the youngest officers to ever command a destroyer group. His record showed intelligence, bravery, and absolute loyalty to his admiral. Thelvorin stopped at the bottom of the ramp. His two attendants took positions behind him. He activated his translation device and spoke. Admiral Cole, I am Ambassador Thelvorin of the Volanti Collective. We come with intentions of establishing formal relations between our peoples. Patricia nodded slowly. Her expression did not change. Ambassador, Earth welcomes you. Though I have to admit, we are curious why the Collective chose now to make contact. You have been watching us for a very long time. Thelvorin's compound eyes shifted through several colors. Blue for amusement. Yellow for respect. This human was direct. He appreciated that. Your species has achieved faster than light travel, he replied. You have, as your people say, graduated. The Collective extends membership to all spacefaring civilizations. We offer trade, protection, and alliance. Daniel shifted slightly. Patricia's eyes narrowed just a little. Thelvorin noticed both reactions. These humans were not stupid. They had caught the important word. Protection, Patricia said slowly. Protection from what, exactly? Thelvorin's colors shifted to gray. This was the delicate part. He had to make them understand the danger without scaring them too much. He needed them worried, not panicked. The galaxy is not empty, Admiral. And not all who live within it are as diplomatic as the Collective. There are empires out there that view young species like yours as resources to be used. Slave labor. Genetic material. He paused. Food. The humans exchanged glances. Good. They were beginning to understand. The Collective has protected many species from these threats. Thelvorin continued. We can protect humanity as well. All we ask in return is cooperation, partnership, a willingness to work together for the common good. Patricia studied him for a long moment. Her face was impossible to read. Then she nodded once. We have prepared a conference center for negotiations, she said. My people will show you to your quarters so you can rest after your journey. We will begin formal discussions tomorrow morning. Thelvorin made a gesture of agreement. That is acceptable, Admiral. I look forward to our talks. As human soldiers led him toward a waiting vehicle, Thelvorin allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The first meeting had gone well. The humans were clearly nervous about the threats he had described. They would be eager to accept the Collective's protection. Within a few days, Earth would be a member world, and humanity would be safely under control. He did not notice the look that passed between Patricia and Daniel as he walked away. He did not see the slight smile on the Admiral's lips. And he certainly did not understand what that smile meant. The Volanti had watched humanity for 300 years. They thought they knew everything about these strange, violent creatures. But they had missed something important. They had seen humanity's capacity for destruction, but they had not understood it. They had seen humans fight and kill, but they had not grasped why. They were about to learn. The negotiations began the next morning in a large conference room overlooking the ocean. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, painting golden rectangles on the polished table. The room smelled of coffee and tension. On one side sat the human delegation. Admiral Patricia Cole was at the center, her gray eyes focused and alert. Secretary of State Gregory Morton sat to her right, a stack of documents in front of him. Commander Daniel Hayes sat to her left, taking notes on a small tablet. Behind them, a rotating group of advisors, scientists, and military officers filled the remaining chairs. On the other side sat only Thelvorin and his two attendants. The ambassador seemed relaxed, almost amused by the large number of humans facing him. His colors shifted slowly through calm blues and greens. The first day was pleasant. Thelvorin explained the many benefits of joining the Collective. There would be trade agreements that would give humanity access to goods and technologies from across the galaxy. There would be cultural exchanges, allowing humans to learn from species that have been traveling the stars for millions of years. There would be scientific cooperation that could advance human knowledge by centuries in just a few decades. And most importantly, there would be protection. The collective fleet was the largest military force in the known galaxy. No enemy had ever broken through their defensive lines. No member world had ever been conquered or destroyed. Safety, security, peace. These were the gifts the collective offered. The humans listened carefully. They asked questions. They took notes. They seemed impressed by what they heard. Delvarn felt confident. Everything was going according to plan. On the second day, they discussed the terms of membership. Gregory leaned forward, his reading glasses sitting on his nose as he studied the translated documents. His face was calm, but his voice had an edge to it. Ambassador, I want to make sure I understand this correctly. In exchange for membership, Earth would contribute a percentage of our industrial output to the collective's central logistics network. That is correct, Thelvarm replied. Approximately 12% of your manufacturing capacity would be allocated to collective projects. This is standard for all member worlds. 12%. Gregory made a note. And what about our military forces? Thelvorn's colors flickered briefly. This was the sensitive part. Your military would be incorporated into the collective defense fleet. Your officers would serve under collective command structures. Your vessels would be modified to meet collective specifications and standards. The room went very quiet. Patricia, who had been silent for most of the morning, finally spoke. You want us to hand over our fleet. Not hand over, Admiral. Integrate. Your ships would remain crewed by your people. Your officers would still command them. They would simply operate under the strategic direction of the collective high command. This is how we maintain coordination across hundreds of member worlds. And if we refuse? The question hung in the air like smoke. Thelvorn's colors cycled through several shades before settling on a deep, almost black purple. His attendants shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Admiral, the galaxy beyond collective space is very dangerous. I was not exaggerating yesterday when I spoke of empires that prey on unprotected species. The collective cannot extend our protection to those who do not accept membership. Our resources are not unlimited. We must prioritize the safety of our members. That sounds like a threat, Daniel said quietly. It is not a threat, Commander. It is simply reality. Thelvorn spread his thin arms in a gesture that his species used to show openness. We cannot force you to join, but we also cannot protect you if you choose to remain outside the collective. And we cannot permit unaligned military forces to operate near our borders. It would create instability. It would make our member worlds nervous. Gregory set down his pen. What exactly does that mean? That you cannot permit unaligned military forces near your borders? Thelvorn was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost gentle. Secretary Morton, the collective has existed for over 50,000 years. In that time, we have seen many young species rise and fall. Some joined us and prospered. Others refused and tried to go their own way. His colors shifted to gray. Those who refused rarely survived long. The galaxy is not kind to the weak and alone. The empires I spoke of, they watch for species like yours. Young, aggressive, full of potential resources. If you do not have the collective's protection, they will come for you. Not today. Perhaps not even in your lifetime. But they will come. Patricia's expression did not change. And if we join the collective? If we hand over our fleet and our sovereignty? What happens then? Then you will be safe. Your species will survive and grow under our guidance. In a few thousand years, humanity might even become one of the senior members of the collective. You have potential. We see that, We want to help you reach it. Under your control. Thelvor and Sellers flickered with something that might have been irritation. Admiral, I understand that your species values independence. We have studied your history. We know how you fight against anyone who tries to dominate you. But this is not domination. This is protection, guidance, partnership. It sounds like a cage with comfortable bars. Daniel said. The ambassador turned his compound eyes toward the young commander. Commander Hayes, have you ever seen a species destroyed? Have you ever watched a world burn while its people scream for help that will never come? I have. 3 times. 3 species that refused our offer. 3 worlds that are now nothing but ash and memory. He paused. I do not want that to happen to Earth. I do not want humanity to become the 4th. The room was silent. Outside, seabirds called to each other over the water. The sun continued its slow journey across the sky. Patricia stood up slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were hard as stone. Ambassador, we appreciate your concern for our safety. We understand the dangers you have described. But we need time to consider your offer. These are not decisions that can be made in a single day. Thelvoran made a gesture of acceptance. Of course, Admiral. Take whatever time you need. I will remain here as long as necessary. His colors shifted to a warm orange. I hope you will make the wise choice. For your sake and the sake of your species. Patricia nodded once. We will let you know tomorrow if we have any questions. Until then, please enjoy our hospitality. She turned and walked out of the room. Daniel and Gregory followed. The other humans filed out after them, leaving Thelvaran alone with his attendants. One of the attendants leaned close and spoke in their native language. Ambassador, do you think they will accept? Thelvorn's colors shifted through a complex pattern. They have no choice. They are alone, primitive, and surrounded by dangers they cannot imagine. They will argue and complain, but in the end, they will submit. They always do. He looked out the window at the vast blue ocean. Somewhere beneath those waves, human submarines patrolled with their primitive weapons. In orbit above, human satellites watched the sky with sensors that could barely detect a ship at 1 light-second distance. They were children playing with toys, pretending to be warriors. The collective had nothing to fear from humanity. Or so Thelvoran believed. That night, Patricia stood alone on the observation deck, staring out at the dark Atlantic Ocean. The moon hung low over the water, casting a silver path across the gentle waves. The air was cool and smelled of salt. In the distance, she could see the lights of fishing boats heading out for their nightly work. She had been standing there for over an hour, thinking. The ambassador's words kept repeating in her. Mind, protection, guidance, partnership. Such pleasant words to describe what was really being offered. Surrender, submission, the end of human independence. She heard footsteps behind her. She did not need to turn around to know who it was. Daniel stepped up beside her and leaned against the railing. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just watched the moonlight dance on the water. They do not think we have a choice, Patricia finally said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Do we? Daniel asked. Patricia turned to look at him. In the pale moonlight, her face looked older, tired, but her eyes were still sharp. Still bright with an inner fire that had never dimmed in all her years of service. When I was a young officer, my grandmother told me a story, she said. She served in the Pacific during the Second World War. Her ship was sunk by an enemy submarine. She spent 4 days floating in the water with 11 other survivors. No food, no fresh water. Sharks circling them every night. Daniel listened in silence. She told me that the ocean does not care if you survive. The enemy does not care. God does not care. The only thing that matters is whether you care enough to keep swimming. Patricia turned back to face the sea. 4 days. 11 people started. Only 5 made it to rescue. But she made it. Because she refused to give up. She refused to let the ocean win. What happened to the others? Some died from their wounds. Some gave up and just slipped under the water. One was taken by the sharks. Patricia's voice was flat, emotionless. My grandmother watched them all die. And every night for the rest of her life, she dreamed about those 4 days. But she never regretted surviving. She told me that the only true defeat is the one you accept. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the negotiations began. Admiral, what are we going to do? The ambassador made it clear. If we do not join them, we will be left alone to face whatever monsters are out there. And if we do join them, we lose everything that makes us who we are. Patricia smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had just spotted its prey. The Volanthi have been watching us for 300 years, she said. They have seen our wars, our cruelty, our ability to destroy. And they think they know us. They think they understand what we will do when we face an impossible choice. She turned to look at Daniel, and her eyes were blazing. They are wrong. She pulled out her secure communication device and began entering a long string of codes. Daniel watched her, his heart beating faster. What are you doing? Something that should have been done the moment that alien ship entered our atmosphere. She finished entering the codes and pressed the transmit button. Get Secretary Morton. Wake the President if you have to. Tell them we are moving to Phase 7. Daniel felt his blood go cold. Phase 7. He had heard rumors about that during his time at the Naval War College. Whispers about a secret project so classified that even most admirals did not know it existed. He had always assumed they were just stories. Myths invented by board officers with too much imagination. Phase 7 is real? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Very real. And tomorrow morning, our alien friends are going to learn something that the Volanthi observation team somehow missed. Patricia put away her device and looked out at the dark ocean. Tell the ambassador that we would like to give him a tour of our naval capabilities. Say we want to show him what humanity has accomplished. He will accept. His species is arrogant. They want to see how primitive we really are. And what will we show him? Patricia's smile grew wider. Commander, the Volanthi came here because they detected our colony ships leaving the solar system. They know we have faster than light travel. But there is something they do not know. Something we have kept hidden from everyone. Even ourselves. What is it? They do not know what we built to protect those ships. They do not know what has been waiting in the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean for the last 37 years. She paused. They think they are dealing with a young species that just discovered fire. They are about to find out that we have been preparing for this moment since before most of them were born. Daniel stared at her. His mind was racing, trying to understand what she was saying. 37 years. That would mean the project started during the Cold War, when humanity was at its most paranoid. When both superpowers were building weapons of unimaginable destruction and hiding them in every corner of the planet. Admiral, he said slowly, what exactly did we build? Patricia looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and put her hand on his shoulder. Get some sleep, Commander. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. And after tomorrow, nothing will ever be the same again. She turned and walked toward the doors. For any of us. Daniel watched her go. Then he turned back to the ocean. The moon was higher now, smaller and brighter. The silver path on the water had shifted, pointing towards some distant horizon. Somewhere out there, beneath those dark waves, something was waiting. Something that humanity had built in secret, hidden from the eyes of alien observers who thought they knew everything about the violent little species on the third planet from the sun, Tomorrow, the Volanthi would learn that they had been wrong about humanity. Daniel just hoped that whatever Patricia was planning would not start a war they could not win. But deep in his heart, beneath the fear and uncertainty, he felt something else stirring. Something old and primal. Something that his ancestors had felt when they stood against impossible odds and refused to surrender. Hope. And something that felt very much like pride. The morning was beautiful. The sky was clear and blue, without a single cloud. A gentle breeze came in from the ocean, carrying the smell of salt and seaweed. Birds sang in the trees around the military base. It seemed like the perfect day for a tour. Felvorin and his 2 attendants were escorted to a large observation platform that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean. The platform was made of concrete and steel, built to withstand storms and heavy equipment. Today, it was filled with humans in military uniforms. Admiral Patricia Cole stood at the front railing, wearing her best dress uniform. Every medal and ribbon she had earned in her 40 years of service was displayed on her chest. She looked calm, confident, almost peaceful. Secretary Morton stood beside her, along with Commander Hayes and a full group of military leaders from around the world. Felvorin noticed generals and admirals from at least a dozen different countries. This was unusual. The humans were putting on quite a show. The ambassador walked to the railing and looked out at the ocean. It stretched to the horizon, a vast blue expanse that sparkled in the morning sunlight. There was nothing to see except water and sky. "Admiral Cole," he said politely, "I appreciate the invitation for this tour, but I must confess, I am not sure what there is to see here. Your naval vessels, impressive as they may be by your standards, are not something that would particularly interest the collective." Patricia nodded slowly. "You are right, Ambassador. Our surface ships and submarines are not very impressive compared to your technology. But I did not bring you here to show you those." Felvorin's Sellers shifted with curiosity. "Then what did you bring me here to see?" "Ambassador, you mentioned that the collective has been observing Earth for 300 years. Is that correct?" "It is. In that time, you have watched us fight 2 world wars. You have seen us create nuclear weapons. You have seen us travel to our moon, then Mars, then the outer planets. You have seen us build our first faster-than-light engines." Patricia paused. "But there are some things we have kept hidden, even from your observation teams." Felvorin made a sound that his species used to express doubt. "Admiral, our observation technology is quite advanced. I find it hard to believe that there is anything significant we have not detected." After the first Gulf War, the major powers of Earth realized something important. Conventional military thinking was becoming outdated. We started developing new strategies and new technologies. Most of them were public. Stealth aircraft, drones, directed energy weapons. Patricia turned to face the ocean. But the most important project was never made public. It was never announced. Most governments did not even know it existed. Felvorin's attendants exchanged nervous glances. The ambassador's colors were shifting rapidly now, uncertain and confused. "This project was built in pieces," Patricia continued. "Shipyards around the world constructed different parts, each one disguised as something else. Nobody knew what they were really building. The pieces were transported in secret to the deepest trench in the Pacific Ocean. There, in the darkness where no light ever reaches, they were assembled into something new." "Admiral," Felvorin said slowly, "what exactly are you trying to tell me?" "That project has been waiting in the deep ocean for 37 years. Waiting for the day when Earth would need it." Patricia looked at her watch. "And that day is today." She raised her hand and made a signal to someone behind them. For a long moment, nothing happened. The ocean was calm. The birds continued to sing. The breeze continued to blow. Then the world changed. 3 miles offshore, The surface of the Atlantic Ocean exploded upward. A column of white water shot into the sky, climbing hundreds of feet like a liquid mountain. The sound hit the observation platform a second later. It was not thunder. It was deeper than thunder. It was a sound that vibrated in the bones and shook the chest. It was the sound of something impossible being born. From the center of that column of water, something rose out at first. It was just a dark shape against the white spray, a shadow climbing from the depths. But it kept rising, and rising, and rising. The shape grew larger and larger until the human mind simply refused to accept what it was seeing. It was a ship. But calling it a ship was like calling the sun a candle. The bow alone was larger than any aircraft carrier ever built. It was a wedge of dark armored metal that seemed to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. Strange symbols were carved into its surface. Weapon systems bristled along its sides like the spines of some ancient sea monster. The vessel continued to rise until it cleared the water entirely. It hung in the air, suspended by technologies that defied explanation. Water cascaded from its hull in waterfalls that caught the sunlight and sparkled, like diamonds falling from heaven. Thalvoran stared. His compound eyes were wide open, processing data that did not make sense. His colors had gone completely white, the shade his species only displayed in moments of absolute shock and terror. Behind him, his attendants had fallen to their knees. One of them was making sounds of distress. The ship was 2 miles long. 2 miles. It was larger than any vessel in the collective fleet. It was larger than anything Thalvoran had ever seen in his 300 years of life. And painted on its bow, in letters 300 feet tall, was a name in the human language called English. USS Defiance. Patricia turned to face the ambassador. Her expression was calm, almost kind. "That is the first Titan-class warship ever built by humanity," she said quietly. "It carries a crew of 12,000. Its main weapons can crack a moon in half. It can travel faster than light without leaving a trace. It can operate in any environment, from deep space to the bottom of an ocean." She paused. "An ambassador?" "It is not alone." On the horizon, 2 more shapes were rising from the water. 2 more impossible vessels climbing into the sky to take their places beside their sister ship, USS Valiant, USS Indomitable, 3 Titan-class warships, each one powerful enough to destroy entire fleets, each one hidden from the galaxy for nearly 4 decades, each one a monument to human paranoia, human engineering, and human refusal to ever be caught unprepared. Thalvoran finally found his voice. It came out as a whisper. "How? How is this possible?" "We were watching you. We saw everything." Patricia smiled. "You saw what we wanted you to see. You saw our public military, our aircraft carriers and submarines, our orbital stations and defense satellites." She shook her head slowly. "You never thought to look in the one place where your sensors could not reach. The bottom of our ocean. The crushing depths where light cannot survive. But the technology, the resources. How could you build something like this without us knowing?" "Ambassador, humanity has been preparing for first contact since we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Some of us prepared with hope. Others prepared with fear." She looked up at the 3 massive vessels hanging in the sky. "We built these ships because we knew someday someone would come. And we were determined that when that day arrived, we would not be helpless." Thalvoran was silent for a long time. His colors slowly shifted from white to a deep, complicated purple that meant many things in his species: fear, respect, and something that might have been admiration. "Admiral Cole," he said finally, "I believe the collective has made a serious error in judgment about your species." Patricia nodded. "Yes, you have. Now, shall we return to the conference room? I believe we have some new terms to discuss. The conference room felt different now. The same sunlight streamed through the same windows. The same table sat in the same place. But everything had changed. Thelvorin sat alone on his side of the table. His attendants had asked to remain on the diplomatic vessel. They were too shaken to continue. The ambassador could not blame them. He was shaken too, though he tried not to show it. Through the window behind the human delegation, the USS Defiance hung in the sky like a dark cloud. Its shadow fell across miles of ocean. Every few minutes, the sunlight would catch one of its weapon systems and flash like a warning signal. Patricia sat across from the ambassador. Daniel was on her left. Gregory was on her right. They all looked calm, patient, like people who knew they held all the cards and were waiting to see how the game would play out. "Ambassador," Patricia began, "I think we should start fresh. Forget everything that was said in our previous meetings. The situation has changed, and our discussions should change with it." Thelvorin made a gesture of agreement. "I think that would be wise, Admiral." The collective's initial proposal was based on certain assumptions about Earth's military capabilities. Those assumptions were clearly incorrect. Yes, they were. "May I ask a question?" Patricia nodded. "Why? Why did you hide this from us? We came here offering friendship and protection. If you had shown us these ships from the beginning, the negotiations would have been very different." Patricia was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was thoughtful. "Ambassador, your people have been watching us for 300 years. You have seen us at our worst. You have watched us destroy each other in wars that killed millions. You have seen us poison our own planet with pollution and waste. You have watched us commit terrible acts against our own kind. And based on all of that, you came here expecting to find a species that would give up when faced with a bigger threat." She leaned forward. "But you missed something important. You saw our capacity for destruction. You cataloged our wars and our weapons. But you did not understand why we fight. Humanity does not build weapons because we enjoy killing. We build them because we refuse to be killed. Every war we have ever fought, every terrible thing we have ever done, it all comes from the same place deep inside us. The absolute refusal to surrender. The determination to survive no matter what. The willingness to do whatever it takes to protect what we love." Thelvorin listened in silence. "The collective offered us membership," Patricia continued. "Trade, technology, protection, all very generous. But there was a price. Our fleet, our independence, our right to decide our own future. You asked us to put a collar around our own necks and hand you the leash. We asked you to join a community of peaceful species working together for the common good. You asked us to submit. And that, Ambassador, is something humanity will never do. Not willingly. Not for any price." Patricia sat back in her chair. "If you had come to us with open hands, offering friendship between equals, we would have welcomed you. But you came with conditions, requirements, the hidden threat of what would happen if we said no." Thelvorin's colors shifted through several shades. "The threats were not hidden, Admiral. And they were not empty. There are real dangers in the galaxy. The empires I spoke of are real. The species that were destroyed for refusing to join the collective, they were real too. I believe you. And we will face those dangers. But we will face them on our own terms. As a free people." Patricia looked at Gregory, who nodded slightly. "Here is Earth's counter-proposal, Ambassador." She slid a document across the table. Thelvorin picked it up and began reading. His colors shifted as he went through each section. "A treaty of mutual defense," Patricia explained. "If the collective is attacked, Earth will come to your aid. If Earth is attacked, the collective will come to ours. We fight together, but we remain separate, independent, Equal partners instead of master and servant. And trade? Full trade relations. Open borders for merchants and travelers. Cultural exchanges. Scientific cooperation. Everything you offered before, but without the requirement that we give up our military. Technology sharing? We will share our FTL drive designs. Our Titan-class construction methods. Everything we have learned in our journey to the stars. Patricia paused. In exchange, we expect the same from the collective. Fair trades. Equal exchanges. No secrets. Thelvorin set down the document. He was quiet for a long time, his compound eyes focused on some distant point beyond the window. The Collective Council will not be pleased, he finally said. They expected Earth to become a member world, a managed species under our guidance. What you are proposing is something completely different. What we are proposing is partnership. Real partnership. The Collective gains an ally with the most powerful warships in the known galaxy. In exchange, humanity gains access to the knowledge and resources of 50,000 years of galactic civilization. Patricia extended her hand. That seems like a fair deal to me. Thelvorin looked at her hand. In human culture, this gesture meant agreement, trust, a promise sealed with physical contact. Admiral Cole, he said slowly, when I accepted this mission, I believed I would be negotiating with a primitive species that needed guidance. I expected to spend a few days convincing you to accept terms that would benefit the collective and ensure humanity's survival under our protection. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was strange, his fingers long and thin, but his grasp was firm. I was wrong. Humanity does not need guidance. You do not need protection. What you needed was someone to recognize you as equals. His colors shifted to a deep, respectful green. I believe the collective has severely underestimated your species, Admiral. I look forward to correcting that mistake. Patricia smiled. It was a real smile this time. Warm and genuine. Ambassador, I think this is the beginning of a very interesting friendship. Through the window, the 3 Titan-class warships hung against the blue sky like monuments to human determination. The USS Defiance, the USS Valiant, the USS Indomitable. 3 impossible vessels that represented everything humanity was capable of when faced with an uncertain future. Somewhere across the galaxy, the Collective Council would soon receive Thelvorin's report. They would read about the hidden warships. They would study the images captured by the diplomatic vessel's sensors. They would debate and argue, and eventually accept a new reality. Humanity was not a species to be collected, not a race to be managed or controlled or protected like children who could not take care of themselves. They were a species to be respected, a species to be reckoned with, a species that had looked up at the stars for thousands of years and wondered what was out there, while quietly building the tools to face whatever they might find. And now the galaxy knew. Earth was no longer alone in the darkness. But it was not afraid either. It had never been afraid. Fear was just another enemy to be conquered, another obstacle to be overcome, another challenge to be met with. Determination and courage. That was what it meant to be human. And the stars themselves would learn to remember. Patricia and Thelvorin shook hands as the morning sun climbed higher in the sky. Behind them, through the windows of the conference room, the future waited, uncertain, dangerous, full of possibilities. But humanity had always been good at facing the unknown. They were about to prove it to the entire galaxy.